over the top, being aggressive, persistent after being told no, and other things. If passed, this ordinance would become a municipal ordinance, and a violation of this ordinance would be a Class B misdemeanor.
Okay, are there questions about this? We've had some discussions in a previous council meeting, but I think it's good for in a formal council meeting, if you will, not the work session, to see if there's any questions from any councilman or anybody from the audience. So,
No, I just think it was good for everyone to hear that, especially where we're a public meeting and it's being broadcast, to know that that's going on.
okay, very good. Thank you.
Do we need to make a motion on this, or?
We do.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll make the motion unless there's other questions. Yes.
It's ordinance number 22-2022. So you put that in your motion.
Yes. I make a motion to approve ordinance number 22-2022 of the Springville City Code to restrict aggressive solicitation within Springville city limits.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second it.
It's a roll call vote. Jason,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Craig.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chris, for bringing that up. Okay, Mr. Fitzgerald, if you'd like to talk with us about the non-resident card.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. This is an item that's been under discussion for a few months now. Several council members had initiated some discussion with Canyon residents about access to some of our recreational activities and properties in the city, and questioning, why they were being charged non-resident fees. That resulted in some discussions at the city council level, and then also some direct conversation between staff and various members of the Canyon, both in an in-person meeting and through written correspondence via email. We then set to work after that and some further discussion with the council to put together a proposed policy that's before you tonight. That policy would be to offer a non-resident recreation card to anyone on city utilities living outside the city boundaries. We also had some discussion and included in the policy those that own businesses operating within the city but living outside of city boundaries within the terms of that policy. The proposed card would offer the following benefits: of library card, which would be free. Actually, that's what citizens don't pay for that. A non-resident currently pays $110,000. They would receive resident pricing at the CRC. And then a variety of lesser benefits like a Bartholomew Park parking pass, recreation programs at the city rate, and camping at the city rate. The full policy is within your packet, and kind of the last question, or a question for the council there, would be what the cost, the appropriate cost for that would be. Staff is proposing $175 per year for that. And I wanted to take just a second and talk about that, because the outcome of this very short study and look surprised me a little bit. You'll recall we talked and went through in one of our work sessions that Canyon residents kind of effectively pay something approaching, on average, 50% of what a Springville resident would pay in terms of various fees and taxes and transfers coming to the city. So I took a look at what benefits were being offered and what those costs were to a citizen. And so I wanted to look at those just for a second. And this is at a very high level. I can walk you through it if you would like. This includes bonding here in the CRC and library that you're seeing, because citizens pay for that through their property tax. But after fees, a Springville resident pays $214 per household to have the benefit of the library in town, and $146 per household to have the CRC in town. So if they never use those facilities, the average resident is still paying $360 or so from their various taxes and fees to the city to have those facilities here. Likewise, on the recreation side, about $17 Bartholomew Park at 23, that's certainly a low number. I just divided that by park acreage, and Bartholomew Park's one of our more expensive ones. So the total tax burden, if you will, for the household for the facilities that we're talking about is approximately $461. If we assume the average Canyon resident is putting in about 50%, really the fee should be $230 to be equivalent. The only comment I've received on the policy back so far is 175 is far too high. We won't be participating in that. There may be other feelings there, but already what was likely to be a low participation offering is probably even lower. And to me, there's a little bit of a balancing act between recouping the full fee and also encouraging people to do it. And there's some benefit from people participating in multiple offerings around the city. In other words, if somebody comes in and uses our recreation programs and increases our participation, they're also paying, $40 or $50 or $60 depending on the offering for that as well. So that's the proposal. Welcome your questions, comment, and feedback and interest in the policy.
I have one question. This would be yearly, right?
Correct.
So they
It's
would be
calendar
paying
year.
for a library card every year,
Correct.
where we don't necessarily directly pay it, but obviously we indirectly are paying for it every year.
Correct. That's right. Exactly right.
So the discussion that we've had here in some of the other discussions is that Springville residents don't get to opt out of this $461. The Canyon residents have the opportunity to opt out. Some can buy the pass, some don't have to. To me, I would just as soon see the full amount assessed so that we get full recovery on it. I mean, not that I
Yeah.
love the Canyon residents. It's nothing against them, and I'd love to have them come. But since Springville residents are fully participating anyway, I don't see why Canyon residents shouldn't fully participate.
That would make it very easy for the staff because then no one would take it. And the reason is this slide, the value of the benefits, it's possible if somebody visited Bartholomew Park, for example, 30 or 40 times, that they could recoup their investment of that 461. But when you look down that, they would have to, in essence, use all those recreational programs many times potentially in order to reach $461. I'm
Well,
not faulting
I'm
your
not saying
logic.
$461 because
Oh, you're saying the
50% cuts it
$230.
down. I'm saying the $230.
230.
Yeah, because they're already contributing 50%
Fair.
from what you're talking about. So.
And if you're interested in that as a body, it's very easy. We'll just handwrite that change on the policy. And the policy, by the way, on itself, most policies are handled at the staff level. The policy itself indicates that moving forward, that'll be amended and taken care of at the staff level. So either we could change it tonight or we could change it tomorrow if that's the consensus of the council.
Greg, go ahead.
No, it's paid for, so really it's actually a revenue opportunity in a way, right? Because the citizens are paying. It could be viewed as a revenue opportunity and a gesture of goodwill towards the Canyon citizens. So if somebody was willing to pay $175, I'd be like, sweet, because I don't even think that. I'm with those residents who would say, no, it's not worth it, I'm not going to do it. But I don't know. It depends on if we're looking at it as a revenue opportunity. It's definitely not. Your analogy here is great, but
And it-
some of our citizens are going, well, no wonder I didn't want a library. I mean,
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
And that's why it's a legislative decision. That's why it's here. 'Cause
Yeah.
It could be from 0 to 460 or anything in between.
Exactly. And I view it as a revenue opportunity and a goodwill gesture to the people of the Canyon. So I think you should make it so it'll pencil so you at least have some participation if we're going to go to the effort of creating a program. Because it'd be horrible to create a program and then nobody participate because then we just wasted all of our time creating a program. So I'd say $1.50 to $1.75 is about as high as you want to go and still actually get somebody to participate.
Okay, other thoughts?
How much is a citizen pass to the rec center? I don't know for sure.
It's just
For a
over
family?
500. Where you at? Citizen family pass. 480 for a family pass, and individuals
So that's
160.
with this, then they could buy it for $480.
Correct.
So how much are they now for a non-resident pass?
$610, I believe.
Well, that's okay. It's more than the
I think
that
it's
one
more
said.
than that.
The
It's more than,
savings, the differential was on there of 145 for a family.
There you go.
yeah.
So they do save.
But then it brings in revenue to see where I'm at is that, well, now we paid this. Oh, and now we're going to get more customers to the CRC. So it becomes a revenue stream because in theory it should already pencil with our citizens. If we can basically get more citizens, now we have a bit. Because the only people that are going to do this are the people that are going to use it, which means they're going to spend more money either at the rec center. Granted, some of these other free things they won't, but I think some of those citizens really wanted to use the rec center.
The three items we heard were Bartholomew Park, the library, and the rec
And the
center.
rec center.
Can you go back a couple slides that just
Yeah.
showed the benefit? Yeah, that one.
But they're not going to pay $1.75 and not use the rec center, in my opinion. I think most of the people that are going to buy this.
You
are
need to
going the
use
rec
two.
center.
You have to use two, or it doesn't make sense. If you're only interested in library, go pay 110 and it's cheaper. If you're only going to the rec center, go pay the 145. So you need to use at least two.
Do you have any sense of what the uptake will be at 175?
No, I mean, I guessed in the staff report, very small numbers. I mean, we only have roughly 200 residences up the canyon. The broader writing of the policy may open it up to another 50 or 100 possible people, maybe not even that high. And it's a fairly high price point. You can save a few dollars on it, but when you look at the residents up the canyon, you have a broad range of people. You have families that are using our schools and our churches and everything else. You have kind of absentee landlord type residences and everything else. When I look at it, I'd be surprised if we had a couple dozen of these. I just would be.
I mean, is there a big administrative cost incurred by this, or is it?
I don't think it'll be huge. We've done similar things in the past, and it will take hours, and we'll have to create it, and we'll have to make sure our systems are paying attention to it. But it's not going to be a huge drain on resources either way. I mean, if 100 people show up, it'll actually make it better, even though it'll take a little longer to administer.
How do you limit it just to the canyon residents?
Which part?
Well, just saying. I mean, somebody mentioned earlier somebody from Santaquin or somebody from.
So the way we've done it is they're on city utilities. So there are a couple of people actually within Mapleton that would come into a qualification here. If you can bring a city utility bill, or if you're here, we'll just look you up, and if you're on the city utility register, then we would issue a card to you.
Which would make it easier on the admin side.
Yeah, very easy. And we're doing something very similar with Bartholomew Park passes. Right now, they come in, we
And
check
the-
their proof of
oh,
residency,
Green
we
Waste.
hand them
Oh,
a
is
card.
Green Waste on here? I didn't see if Green Waste was on here.
No, you could add that.
There you go. Hey, Jake's like, shut up.
I mean, I agree with you, Mike, and I mean, in principle, yeah, we should, but I don't know what the uptake's going to be.
Well, I
There's
don't
just
know.
not that
I mean,
much
the uptake
benefit to
on
them.
175. I mean, I kind of disagree with Craig in terms of a revenue stream. You get the 100 people at $175. That's not much of a
Well,
revenue.
no, but my point is that, and then they go to the CRC and they create more.
Oh,
revenue.
yeah.
And then the backside is we create. I mean, right now we're spending money. One way or another, we're spending money. So we're going to create a program that nobody's going to uptake. Then it really becomes cost effective or ineffective, because we spend all this time making a program that we just will say no, as to say something and create a program that nobody's going to use.
You're having the same conversation we had at the staff level, and we were kind of all over the place, and we were a very low number and all the way full, and then here we are.
I've lived through these a couple of times before in the last 25 years or 30 years, and I think it's worth a try to see. I think as a goodwill gesture, because we do consider them Springville people. I don't think we're going to get rich. I don't think we're going to go broke doing it. I think it is a goodwill gesture, and I think that price is a little bit high, but I think for them to be encouraged. But I think going any higher, we do block them out of it. So I'd be willing to go for the 175 to see if there's any takers. But I'd like to see if we can get 10 or 20 people to sign on to it and just see what the benefits are. Everything we do, it's subject to change in a future year. We raise fees all the time. If we have everybody up the canyon take it, we know we've made it too low.
Thank you for saying that. And just because, as you'll recall, we've gone through this exercise the last few years, and we've determined as a council what the fee recovery should be. And this fee is set at a high recovery, not a full recovery. And so it gives us a range to work within. This is the bottom end, kind of lower bottom end of the high recovery range. And so if we set that at the high recovery range, then we build that. And if the council wants to change, you just say, no, we're ready for full, or vice versa. We're ready for full. Why don't we try high? And so it'd be very easy for us to manage that once we have that direction from the council. And I think I interrupted you.
No, you didn't interrupt me. I'm just trying to get my thought together and make it so it makes sense. So, they do pay into the electrical. They pay for that, and we haven't really figured that in. And water. So, so we do get some revenue from
that's
that, or is it?
That's
is
where
it right
that
here?
50%
Oh,
discount.
the 50, that's what I was saying. So that's what I was saying, Mike. So then you can feel good about the 50% discount because
Well, I do.
we
I do,
are
but the
getting
50%
gaining
discount's
from them.
$230, not $175. So look, I'm okay with the $175. I would vote for that, but in principle, I want the residents to understand that I'm looking out for them by saying I want full recovery at $230, because they're paying it and they don't have the opportunity to opt out.
Do I take that in the form of a motion, Mr. Snelson? Okay, all of you have had a chance to kind of vocalize your thoughts in relationship to this. What other questions do you have for Troy? Okay, we have on the table the option to approve it, ordinance. We have an option to table it and move it to another session. We have the option to amend this motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-53, adopting the non-resident recreation card policy at $1.75. I added that last part. I don't know if it matters.
I'll second. Now, is that $1.75 or $175?
175.
Yeah, and not $1.70.
Chris was already getting Mike riled up earlier, so that didn't help.
I seconded. I seconded it. Yes.
Okay, we have a roll call vote. Mr. Snelson?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Sorensen?
Yes.
Mr. Jensen?
Yes.
I just have to tell you guys. So sorry to interrupt there.
No, go ahead.
It was funny. So Chris was saying as they were taking digital pictures, like, Mike, do you realize how much revenue you've lost because photography's gone digital?
Ouch.
Got him going.
That's what he meant.
Okay, Josh, take us through Lakeside Landing and some of the amendments that have been proposed.
All right, we spent, Mayor and Council, thank you. We spent a while on these amendments in our work session last week, and we got through almost all of them. So I just wanted to flip through them and ask if there were any questions on any of these. So I'm just going to quickly move through them and ask if there's any desire for any additional clarification for these lot type standards, which is the first category. These are all just geometric tweaks to these lot type standards or to the height. Again, on this height one, didn't actually change the,
Josh,
yes.
let me just ask the council what they would like. He's going through these fairly quickly. Do you want him to go through them and talk about each one of the changes and the recommendation as from the planning commission and from staff, one at a time? Would you like
I
that?
would say no, because I was at the planning commission,
Okay,
and then I agreed with the recommendation.
I'm just wanting to make sure that we have an opportunity to ask questions on
been
each one
substantial-
individually if we want to.
Were there substantial changes from when you went through it with the work session?
There have been a few tweaks, and I will hit those specifically.
That's what I would say is,
Yeah, if there's
we
been
saw a
tweaks
good
since then.
presentation. If we can get the tweaks to that.
Right, we went through the lot type standards, and I don't think we went through the other ones, did we? Or,
We went through the parking layouts.
oh, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct,
I
okay.
think we may have
Garage setback then.
gotten through the intersection recommendations as well.
Okay, well, I stand corrected then. So, yeah, let's go through them, and I'll let him continue on. Just want to make sure you had a chance to ask questions.
I do want to put the brakes on this one, though,
Okay.
because it always boggles my mind why we have to have stories and feet. Why can't we just have feet? If somebody wants to do a one-story, 32-foot high story, why not? I always get confused about stories and feet. So we're doing 2 stories at 32 feet.
Because there's we're doing 2 stories at 32 feet, and there's specific differences in the form of the building, especially in this case between a 1.5 story and a 2-story building, and there's a specific definition in the in this code about how much of the floor area of the second floor is at a full height, how much of that second floor is basically livable based on like the clear height of the ceiling, and where that the height of the sill plate of the roof. So it does change the appearance of the building in a way that the height, the foot measurement of the height wouldn't necessarily control. So this was initially saying we're looking for a 1.5 story appearance building, and the maximum height of that building can be 32 feet. And now we're coming back and saying there's really no reason why this building can't be a full 2 stories with a roof on top of that second story. But we don't feel any need. We don't see any need to increase that height number. So
The purpose of the stories is to tell us how many levels we can have, and the maximum height of the building to mid-gable is 32 feet. Do I understand that properly?
Right.
So how tall is a story?
It ranges anywhere from 8 feet to
So the builder can make that determination how tall he wants his story.
correct.
And these roofs haven't changed. The pitch of the roofs, the building types haven't changed. For example, you don't make a flat roof now. Or
You
get
could have a
additional-
flat roof in this lot type.
So you technically make it so that the design of that building could be flat, where now it would not be flat. It would only be a pitched roof. Is that right?
That's probably a good question to ask Corkett as the applicant makes the presentation. I would believe that would be true because it's the half story has a maximum height of the sill plate from the floor at the exterior wall, and if you were a flat roof, you wouldn't have any occupiable space on that top floor because you wouldn't have a pitched roof. So yes, you could build a flat roof building in this because it's a maximum height of 1.5 stories, but you couldn't easily build a 1.5 story building with a flat roof. So it wouldn't.
Right. You'd have a pitched roof.
You'd have a pitched roof.
And so I guess the question is whether we want to, change the design look of the building by allowing 2 stories is really what you're boiling it down to.
Yeah, and again, you could do a 1-story building with this type with a flat roof or a shed roof or some type of other roof form, a hip roof, a mansard roof, or any of those.
So they can build up to 32
Correct.
feet.
It's not a minimum height.
Okay.
But yes, you're unlikely. You're not going to get a 1.5 story building that has a flat roof on it,
Right.
as far as I can get my head around that.
Right. So the chance of getting a flat roof with 2 stories is very high.
Probably not on this type of building, this small liner building, just a normal residential construction IRC building. They're probably more likely to just use a standard truss package.
But likely, in opposed to just having in the code that this has to be a pitch of 412 or 612 or something.
Yeah.
If you wrote that in there, then that would ensure keeping the same look of the building as opposed to having the chance of having a flat roof. If you just leave it open, if I was a builder, I'd be getting more revenue per square foot. I'd put a flat building on or flat roof on every one of those. That's me. If you're trying to get revenue, so
I guess I'm not following that.
So I know, well, are you thinking that it would be, are you thinking that it would be less expensive to put a flat roof on it?
no, it gives you more square footage because if you have a pitched roof, you're going to have not as much livable space.
Well, depending on,
Floor, not the
Not if it's
32 feet. Now you go 32 feet.
Well,
Unless you had
Yeah, I see
12,
what you're saying.
12
Well,
foot
I mean-
tall walls.
well, that's true. That's
If you're a
true.
builder trying to compensate or, make more money, you're not gonna have 12-foot walls.
Well, that's true. That's true. I guess if you have 2 stories, that would work. Yeah, that
two
would work.
10-foot stories.
Yeah, so I'm not thinking right.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be crazy to.
Yeah.
So are you trying to get away from allowing flat roofs? Is that part of your?
No,
question
what
too?
I'm trying to do is I'm trying to protect the look down there and making sure that I'm not really a fan of flat roofs, and we have buildings that are flat roofs down there. I'm not really a fan of it. You know, I'm much more into the look down there, and if it creates an opportunity where somebody's going to create a flat roof to get more square footage, but I can see where I wasn't thinking right. But that's my worry, is making sure that architecturally the look of the street has a good look to it. You drive between here and State Street and you see a lot of flat roofs, and I just think that's a real tragedy for a look for a city and what the street looks like. So
And I agree with the look down there too, and I think that we may, I mean, it's hard to make sure that we are really gonna get that look, because these are just conceptual drawings.
they are.
And
Right, these are
They're
just
not
massing diagrams. These don't have anything to do with architectural design, but there is, and you adopted
Had design standard.
last year a pattern book that, I mean, there is specific architectural standards in a separate section, and then there is even more specific architectural standards in the pattern book that apply to the more urban
do.
lot types, like your mixed-use apartment buildings, your Main Street lot. There's about 4 or 5 lot types that those even more prescriptive design standards or pattern book apply to.
Okay, well, I stand corrected, because you got 2 stories, and it's a pretty good size story, so.
I am a mess with this. I am
You really
so
are. We need to move
sorry.
that
I am
mic
like a
away from
mess
you.
with it. I'm so sorry. Sorry.
Sorry to sidetrack you.
Oh, no problem. Glad we could clear that up.
Mike, did you get your questions answered on this? Okay.
So this one came with a recommendation from approval from staff and planning commission. This lot type standard, we did make a change on this from planning commission, and this is a recommendation that I've put in. We have made these changes at Corkett's initial suggestion due to the fact that we didn't have a lot type, like a single-story commercial block that could be used on Main Street. And we realized that this neighborhood store, restaurant, or civic building lot type probably wasn't going to just be used around the perimeter of the site, kind of on like pad sites on the corner of arterial streets, but that it could very easily be used on Main Street. Like, majority of our Main Street is actually this building type. I was talking to the mayor earlier, like SOS Drug is just a single-story commercial block building. And it's, if we required, kept the lot minimums and street frontage and depth requirements, it really would be impractical to use this as a small commercial space on Main Street. So we removed those. But then additionally, in order for it to be able to fit with the rest of the fabric on Main Street, just like our Main Street, we don't have any interior side setbacks, so no spaces between the side walls of buildings. So when you go from Central Bank to SOS Drug, there's no side wall. To the next, there's no side wall. I mean, sorry, there's side walls. There's no side setbacks. So I would recommend, as part of this adoption, that we add this 0 or to the building side setback, so that the building would either be 0 setback, so immediately adjacent to the building next to it, or at least 5 feet away. So just to provide that option to enable it to fit a Main Street character where you have 0 side lot buildings. And that it also had a positive recommendation from staff and planning commission.
When you like the 5 instead of the 8?
Well, it was at 5.
Oh, was it 5? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was 5 and 5 at the side to begin with. We just gave it a 0 or, which is similar to the other lot types. On this new lot type standard 29 parking structure lot type, we noticed after planning commission that there was a note 3 mentioned up here, but the note 3 had been missed down here, so we just added that in. It's that the setbacks 0 when the parking structure is attached to a building, but 5 feet when it's not attached, just so that we don't have a note referencing one that doesn't exist. And so that arrow signifies that's a change since Planning Commission. On the thoroughfare standards, we went through these in pretty good detail last time, but what we've done in the interim is finalized the coordination with Public Works, with engineering, in relocating one of the active transportation facilities to a more appropriate location, and then clarifying the designation of these intersections. Engineering was specifically interested in clarifying the function and the intersection type of these intersections. So we added additional designators on here to designate which intersections are full movement intersections and which intersections are not full movement. So each intersection has a C on it, and on your left is what was considered by the Planning Commission, which we were in the process of changing. This C moved down a block, and the C's are a toucan, which is the type of crossing we talked about last time where bikes and pedestrians can cross, but cars can't. And so the C was moved down to here, and then these crossings with the cluster of designations here mean that they're full movement intersections, but also roundabouts, and they are enhanced pedestrian intersections. So this is an enhanced pedestrian roundabout. This is an enhanced pedestrian or an enhanced intersection roundabout. And this down here designates that this is a signal, but still an enhanced intersection. The mayor also expressed a concern, and I want to make sure everyone was clear that there are intersections here where there will not be the ability to cross straight across 2600 West, but it will be very similar to what we have on 1200 West in the existing portion and 1200 West's planned configuration in the north section above 400 South, where because of this, streets roll as a major arterial and carrying regional traffic and being part of that regional grid, and to the north of this area funded by partly by MAG, that the access is controlled on this facility. And so anywhere we have these H intersections, those are full movement intersections, signalized or not. And the farthest someone would have to travel out of direction would essentially be one intersection or one block to either turn around or come the other direction to come out to those intersections, just like 1200 West. Some of the existing, there's already some existing intersections that are stopped by the median, and as you move north from 400 South, we'll have a full movement intersection or a roundabout at Center and at 5th North. And then the intermediate streets, most of them will be right in, right out.
Maybe this is something that I just can't tell from the design, but if the cars can't cross left and right at those places, why does it show a full road still there? What is the purpose? You're creating if somebody doesn't know that and they head down there, what are they going to do?
Turn right.
Oh, they can turn right. It's
Yes.
not, okay.
So you can turn right into
You
it
said
and turn
no,
right out of it.
okay, it's not crossing, but they
Yes.
can still turn right. I was thinking, you know what I was thinking?
Yeah.
And it's not that.
It's
Okay.
not blocked. No, it's
Okay.
not a dead end.
All right.
Any questions on that? There's a lot there.
A good example of that we talked about is Third South in Provo, where they've changed that to where some of the lights allow you to go through and some they don't.
Yeah.
So just so you're aware.
And Fifth West as well.
I don't know, I was thinking that, but I was.
So you've got, I don't know what the road is, over here on the left, where you've got 3A intersections. You've shifted that over to this other road with these.
Yes, that's.
What's that?
So this is a bicycle boulevard.
Okay,
The
that makes sense.
and it was initially, and it was probably a mistake that it was on the road in front of Love's, and that's not a place we want active transportation users. And so we actually moved it over to the new road that will be to the west of Love's, and then we'll head up straight all the way to the north into the business area to the north.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense.
And then the last element on the thoroughfare standards was that we went over was adding a provision for mid-block shared parking so that we could have the parking be on an outlot instead of gerrymandering each perimeter lot to pick up a piece of the parking. And then and there's specific requirements in there about how much of the lot can be allocated that way and how the depth of the lots can be reduced. And then there's an additional provision in the T5I and T6 transects to allow tuck under and podium parking, so parking at the ground floor of a building. And this provides a specific requirement that can't be located any closer than 25 feet of a street right-of-way. So that ensures that we don't end up with a building with just parking at the ground floor that's totally dead to the street.
What's podium parking?
First floor, where you basically got a parking garage on the fourth floor and the building sits on top. So if you're familiar with the apartments across from Costco in Orem at the mall, those are all podium because the ground floors are just parking decks.
Yeah.
It's basically a base the rest of the building sits on. And then in thoroughfare standards, we also talked about this a little bit, the reduction in front setbacks within the a reduction in the front setbacks in the T5 and T5I from 8 feet, or to 8 feet for the building and 0 feet for the front porch, and then tapering up as you go to the less intense transects, essentially because we have a green street there already. We're not buffering the houses or the lots from cars, and that additional front setback can accrue to rear yards. It really doesn't change the depth of the lots, but it effectively would end up putting that either allowing, well, it actually doesn't allow more lot coverage because the lot coverage is fixed, but it would move that area to the back of the lot and then relying on that pedestrian green street for the front yards. And then this is the actual red line amendment to that page. So this is the big one we didn't get to, and this is on page 18, which is the regulating plan specifically for the southern part, so the part that is controlled by and planned to be developed by UBA. And this calls out that in the southern part, up to 15% of the maximum permitted yield of units within any phase can be carried forward to a future phase within the within the southern part, subject to the following conditions. And that is that the carried forward units have to be identified and located on an overall plan that we get with the first phase, so we know where these carried forward plans are going. And that no block into which units are carried forward may exceed its maximum permitted density or unit count by more than 15%. So the units that are being taken off of the first phase end up somewhere, and they do push those blocks up if you draw a line around them individually, but we're capping that at 15%, and I have a table later that will show you kind of what that is in terms of real numbers. And next, that the total unit count for the southern part doesn't change. It still stays the maximum that they were entitled to begin with. And that all other requirements have to be met. You still have to be able to park it. You still have to meet your lot face diversity standards. You still have to use the lot types that are available. You can't say, we've got 10 extra units we need on this lot. We want to build a 5th story. Everything else has to be met. It just allows you to carry some units forward. And this is what it looks like on the sheet. And it, again, applies specifically to the regulating plan for the southern portion. So the blocks filled in on the map on the lower left. So essentially, this is a illustrative or overall plan that we've received from UBA for their portion of the project. And if you draw a line all the way around it and do the math, it's compliant. And if you draw a line all the way around their southeastern portion, which is their phase 1, it is compliant. But it has fewer units, but provides more commercial. And then if we look at it on a block-by-block basis, they have specific blocks that give units and specific blocks that take units. So here you can see designated which blocks push or are short units and which blocks receive those units. Now it looks like there's a lot of pluses here, but when you look at the actual numbers, it's that is not the best way to convey what's happening. So this is the matrix that results, at least from the current plan that UBA has presented. And there is one block, block 6B down here, that based on our math exceeds the 15% max increase in net units of 20%. So by my math, they have to lose 2 units there to get that back to 15%. But that is the block that carries forward the largest number of units. And once you get back to get that back in line, then the next largest is 6 units. Block 5 will have 6 more units than it did initially at 65 to 71 for an increase of 9%. Then when you come down to the bottom, the residential total stays the same, so there's no net change in the units. But what really helped us feel comfortable about this is 2 things: that we're not borrowing units from the future. Like the Outlook project has a development agreement that's southwest of this on 2600 West and 400 South that permitted them to build a certain number of residential units and also required the construction of a certain number of commercial product. But that commercial product was in the future, and the residential units were captured up front. And in the interim, since that project is built, we haven't seen any additional development past the phase 1. In this scenario, the extra resident or the surplus residential units are being actually pushed into the future, and the commercial is being brought into the first phase. So overall, the plan that UVA has presented nets us 55,000 square feet of commercial in addition to the required minimum amount of commercial at 67,000 square feet. And a lot of that, the majority of that difference is in that first phase, because they're proposing office space over on the upper floors of some of the buildings where we had initially considered it probably would be residential. So because of the net increase in commercial, the no net change in terms of units and density, and the fact that this doesn't allow borrowing units from future phases, but it can only carry forward units that are displaced by this increase in commercial, we felt very comfortable with this, especially because they're essentially locked in by providing us this plan to show us where they're going to go. So we up front essentially know what's going to happen. So that's that. Probably the